Marcus Thompson stood in front of the mirror, adjusting his navy blue tie one last time before heading to work. At 32, he had built a solid reputation at Sterling and Associates over the past 3 years. His marketing campaigns have brought in millions of dollars in revenue, and his colleagues often sought his advice on challenging projects. The morning sun streamed through his apartment windows as he grabbed his leather briefcase, a gift from his mother when he first landed the job. "You're going places, son," she had told him. Until 2 months ago, Marcus would have agreed with her without hesitation. Everything changed when Richard Sterling took over as the new boss. The previous manager, Sarah Chen, had retired after 20 years with the company, and the shift in leadership was dramatic. Where Sarah had been warm and merit-focused, Richard seemed cold and oddly distant, particularly toward Marcus. As Marcus drove to work that morning, his mind wandered to the incidents that had been piling up. Last week, he had submitted a comprehensive proposal for a new client, only to be told it needed extensive revisions. Yet when Jessica, his white colleague, submitted a similar proposal the next day, Richard praised it as exactly what we're looking for. The Sterling and Associates building loomed ahead, its glass exterior reflecting the morning light. Marcus parked in his usual spot and took a deep breath. He had learned to wear his professional mask well, keeping his emotions in check despite the growing tension. Walking through the office, Marcus noticed the subtle changes in atmosphere when Richard was around. The easy camaraderie that once existed became strained. Some colleagues still treated him the same way, like Tom from accounting, who always stopped by his desk to chat about basketball, but others seemed to take cues from Richard's behavior. At his desk, Marcus found an email from Richard asking him to redo the Johnson account presentation, despite having already revised it twice. Each revision request came with vague criticisms but no specific guidance. Marcus opened the file and noticed Richard had CC'd the entire team on the email, something he never did with other employees' work. "Hey, Marcus," called Amy from the desk across from his. "Did you hear about the team dinner last night?" Marcus looked up, his stomach tightening. "Team dinner?" "Yeah, Richard took the marketing team to that new Italian place downtown. I assumed you couldn't make it," Amy said, her face showing genuine confusion. Marcus forced a smile. "Must have missed the invite," he said, though he knew there hadn't been one. It was the third team event he hadn't been informed about in the past month. Opening his project folder, Marcus pulled out his documentation notebook. After the second week of Richard's unusual behavior, he had started keeping detailed records of every interaction, email, and incident. The list was growing longer by the day. During the morning meeting, Marcus noticed how Richard deliberately avoided making eye contact with him. When Marcus shared his ideas for the upcoming quarter, Richard quickly moved on without comment, yet spent 10 minutes praising Brad's less developed concepts. Around lunchtime, Marcus overheard Richard talking to HR about maintaining certain standards and cultural fit. The words seemed innocent enough, but Marcus had been in the corporate world long enough to recognize coded language when he heard it. As the afternoon wore on, Marcus focused on his work, determined not to let the situation affect his performance. He had always believed that excellence was the best response to prejudice. His father, a retired high school principal, had taught him that lesson early in life. At 4:30 p.m., Marcus received another email from Richard, this time requesting his presence in the conference room the next morning at 9 a.m. sharp. The message was brief and formal, with no indication of the meeting's purpose. That evening, as Marcus packed up his things, he noticed Richard watching him from his office. There was something in his boss's expression that made him uneasy, a mix of calculation and something else he couldn't quite identify. On the drive home, Marcus called his sister Diana, a corporate lawyer in Atlanta. "Keep documenting everything," she advised. "Every email, every meeting, every interaction. If what you're suspecting is true, you'll need all the evidence you can get." Marcus ended the call as he pulled into his driveway, his mind already on tomorrow's meeting. Despite the knot in his stomach, he felt a strange sense of calm. Whatever Richard had planned, Marcus was prepared to face it with the same dignity and professionalism he'd always shown. Little did he know, the next morning would change not just his career, but the lives of many others in ways he couldn't imagine. The next morning arrived with dark clouds hanging over the city. Marcus woke up earlier than usual, his mind already running through possible scenarios for the 9 a.m. meeting. He chose his best charcoal gray suit, wanting to project confidence despite his growing unease. During his drive to work, rain started falling, matching his somber mood. The office was quieter than usual when he arrived at 8:30 a.m. A few early birds were already at their desks, including Amy, who gave him a concerned look as he walked past. "Marcus," she called out softly, walking over to his desk. "I overheard something in the break room yesterday." Richard was talking to the HR manager about making some necessary changes to the team. She hesitated before adding, "Just be prepared, okay?" Marcus thanked her with a nod, appreciating her warning while trying to maintain his professional composure. He spent the next 20 minutes reviewing his performance records and recent projects. Every metric showed excellence. His campaigns had consistently outperformed targets, and client feedback was overwhelmingly positive. At 8:55 a.m., Marcus gathered his materials and headed to the conference room. Through the glass walls, he could see Richard already seated, along with Linda from HR. Their serious expressions confirmed his worst fears about the meeting's purpose. "Please, take a seat, Marcus," Richard said, his tone unusually formal. Linda sat quietly, her laptop open in front of her. Marcus noticed she wouldn't meet his eyes. What followed was 30 minutes of what Marcus would later describe as death by 1,000 cuts. Richard cited vague concerns about Marcus's cultural fit within the organization, mentioned communication issues that had never been previously discussed, and questioned his ability to align with the company's direction. Therefore, Richard concluded, sliding a document across the table, "We've decided to terminate your employment, effective immediately." Marcus sat perfectly still, years of dealing with subtle racism having prepared him for this moment. "May I ask for specific examples of these performance issues?" he asked calmly, noting how Richard shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "The decision is final," Richard replied firmly. "Security will escort you to your desk to collect your personal belongings." As if on cue, 2 security guards appeared at the door. Marcus noticed they seemed uncomfortable with the situation, especially Mike, who had always greeted him warmly every morning. While packing his belongings, Marcus observed his colleagues' reactions. Some looked away in shame, others watched with obvious disapproval of the situation. Tom from accounting approached him despite Richard watching from his office. "This isn't right, Marcus," Tom whispered, slipping a business card into his hand. "My brother's a civil rights attorney. Call him." Back home, Marcus spread out his documentation on his dining room table. 3 months of detailed notes, emails, and recordings of meetings painted a clear picture of systematic discrimination. He had even kept screenshots of team event invitations that had mysteriously never reached his inbox. His phone buzzed continuously with messages from concerned colleagues. Amy sent him copies of emails she witnessed Richard deleting from the server. Jennifer from marketing forwarded him a conversation where Richard had questioned Marcus's qualifications despite his impressive track record. That evening, his sister Diana flew in from Atlanta. As they reviewed the evidence together, she grew increasingly confident about the strength of a potential case. "Look at this," she said, pointing to a pattern in the meeting schedules. "Every major client presentation you prepared was reassigned to white colleagues at the last minute. That's not coincidence, that's discrimination." Marcus received an unexpected call from Sarah Chen, his former boss. "I've been hearing things," she said. "This isn't the company I helped build for 20 years. I'm willing to testify about your performance under my management." As the day drew to a close, Marcus sat in his home office, looking at the business card Tom had given him. The weight of what he was about to undertake felt heavy on his shoulders. This wasn't just about his job anymore. It was about every person who had ever faced discrimination in silence. Just then, his phone pinged with a message from an unknown number. "Mr. Thompson, I have information about Richard Sterling that could help your case. Meet me tomorrow at Carter's Coffee Shop, 10 a.m. What's happening at Sterling and Associates goes deeper than you know." Marcus stared at the message, his heart racing. Tomorrow would bring either answers or more questions, but one thing was certain. This fight was just beginning. The next morning, Marcus arrived at Carter's Coffee Shop 15 minutes early. He chose a corner table with a clear view of the entrance, his sister Diana's warning about being cautious echoing in his mind. He had told her about the mysterious message, and while she advised against meeting strangers, she also recognized the potential value of insider information. At exactly 10 a.m., a woman in her mid-50s walked in. She scanned the coffee shop before making eye contact with Marcus. Her professional attire and confident stride suggested she worked in corporate management. "Mr. Thompson," she said, extending her hand. "I'm Patricia Wells, former head of HR at Sterling and Associates. I left the company 3 months ago, right before Richard Sterling took over." Marcus gestured for her to sit, his interest piqued. Patricia pulled out a thick manila envelope from her briefcase. "What I'm about to share with you could put my career at risk," she began, her voice low but steady. "But I can't stay silent anymore. Your termination wasn't the first incident, it's part of a larger pattern." She opened the envelope, revealing documents spanning several years. Richard Sterling isn't just the new boss. He's been brought in specifically to restructure the company. In the past year, he's done this at 3 other corporations. Each time, minority employees were systematically pushed out under the guise of performance issues or company restructuring. Marcus examined the papers, his hands trembling slightly. The documents showed a clear pattern. In each company Richard had managed, there was a significant decrease in minority employment within months of his arrival. "But here's what makes your case different," Patricia continued, pulling out another set of papers. "Richard made a mistake this time. He left a digital trail. In his haste to terminate you, he accidentally copied me on some emails that were meant for the current HR team. The emails revealed conversations between Richard and senior management, discussing ways to maintain traditional company culture. A phrase Patricia explained was code for maintaining a predominantly white workforce." As they talked, Marcus's phone buzzed repeatedly. It was Amy from the office, sending urgent messages. "Emergency at work. Richard's going through your old files. He's deleting things. Tom and I are saving copies. Call your lawyer now." Patricia wasn't surprised. "He's getting sloppy. He knows you have evidence. But what he doesn't know is that I've been building a case against him for months." She pulled out one final document, a preliminary investigation report from the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, EEOC. Richard's name appeared multiple times, linked to discrimination complaints across different companies. "The EEOC has been watching him," Patricia explained. "But they haven't had enough concrete evidence to act. Your case could be the tipping point." Just then, Marcus's phone rang. It was Tom from accounting. "Marcus, you need to see this. Richard just called an all-hands meeting. He's announcing a company-wide restructuring. 3 other minority employees got termination notices this morning. People are walking out in protest." Patricia's expression hardened. This is his pattern: create chaos, push people out, claim it's all about business necessity. But he's never faced opposition like this before. As they wrapped up their meeting, Patricia handed Marcus her business card. "I'm willing to testify, and I'm not the only one. There are others who witnessed his practices but were afraid to speak up. Your case could break this whole thing wide open." Marcus left the coffee shop with renewed determination. His phone was filled with messages from current and former colleagues, all offering support and evidence. The story was growing bigger than just his wrongful termination. Driving home, he called Diana. "Sis, we need to move fast. It's not just about me anymore. There's a whole system that needs to be exposed." "I'm already on it," Diana replied. "Just got off the phone with the EEOC. They want to meet tomorrow. And Marcus, there's something else. Someone from Richard's past reached out. Says they have information that could change everything." Marcus pulled into his driveway, his mind racing with the day's revelations. What had started as a fight for his job had evolved into something much larger, a chance to challenge systemic discrimination at its roots. As he sat in his car, another message came through. This one made his heart stop. "Mr. Thompson, this is Agent Sarah Martinez from the FBI's Civil Rights Division. We need to talk." The story was about to take an even more unexpected turn. The FBI's local field office was housed in a modern glass building downtown. Marcus sat in a conference room alongside Diana, facing Agent Martinez and her partner, Agent Collins. The room felt tense with anticipation. "Mr. Thompson," Agent Martinez began, spreading photographs across the table. "What you've stumbled into goes far beyond workplace discrimination. Richard Sterling isn't just a prejudiced executive. He's part of a sophisticated network that's been systematically dismantling diversity programs in major corporations across the country. The photos showed Richard at various corporate events, but it was the people around him that caught Marcus's attention. He recognized several high-profile CEOs who had made headlines for controversial hiring practices. Over the past 5 years, Agent Collins explained, "We've tracked a pattern. This group targets successful companies with strong diversity initiatives. They place their people in key positions, usually starting with HR or senior management. Then they begin what they call cultural realignment, systematically removing minority employees while covering their tracks with false performance reviews and restructuring plans." Diana leaned forward, her legal mind racing. "That explains the pattern Patricia Wells discovered. But why hasn't this been stopped?" "They're careful," Agent Martinez replied. "They used legitimate-looking business practices to hide their real motives. Until now, we haven't had enough evidence to prove intent. But your brother's case is different." The agents revealed that Richard had made critical mistakes at Sterling and Associates. His hasty actions in firing Marcus, combined with the digital evidence preserved by Marcus's colleagues, had created a paper trail they couldn't easily erase. Just then, Marcus's phone lit up with a message from Amy. "Emergency. Richard's cleaning out his office. Security's involved. Something big is happening." Agent Martinez nodded, unsurprised. "Our team is moving in now. We've been waiting for the right moment. Richard's panic is exactly what we needed." The next few hours were a blur of activity. Marcus and Diana watched from the FBI office as news began breaking. Local stations were reporting that federal agents had raided Sterling and Associates. Social media was buzzing with employee videos showing Richard being escorted from the building. "What happens now?" Marcus asked, still processing the magnitude of the situation. "We need you to testify," Agent Collins explained. "Your case is the linchpin. We have hundreds of similar cases across the country, but yours has the clearest evidence of intentional discrimination." Diana's phone rang. It was Patricia Wells. "Turn on the news," she said urgently. Channel 7. The television in the conference room showed live coverage of a press conference. The CEO of Sterling and Associates was announcing Richard's immediate termination and a full internal investigation. But the bigger shock came when the camera panned to show Sarah Chen, Marcus's former boss, standing at the podium. As the newly appointed interim CEO, Sarah announced, "My first action will be to reinstate all employees wrongfully terminated under Richard Sterling's leadership. We will be cooperating fully with federal investigators to ensure justice is served." Marcus sat in stunned silence as Sarah continued, detailing plans for a complete corporate overhaul and the establishment of one of the strongest diversity and inclusion programs in the industry. "There's something else you should know," Agent Martinez said, sliding one final document across the table. "We found this in Richard's personal files. It's a list of his next targets, companies he was planning to infiltrate. The network is larger than we imagined." As the day drew to a close, Marcus and Diana left the FBI office with a mix of emotions. The fight wasn't over. There would be depositions, testimonies, and likely a lengthy trial. But they had struck a significant blow against a system designed to perpetuate discrimination. Marcus's phone hadn't stopped buzzing. Messages poured in from colleagues, friends, and even strangers who had heard the news. Many shared similar stories of discrimination, thanking him for taking a stand. As they drove home, Diana looked at her brother. "You know this makes you a target, right? These people won't go down quietly." Marcus nodded, thinking about everything that had happened. Someone has to take a stand. Might as well be me. Just then, another message came through, this one from an encrypted number. "Mr. Thompson, we have more evidence. Watch your back. Not everyone at Sterling and Associates is who they appear to be. The real story is about to begin." The battle for justice was far from over, and the biggest revelations were yet to come. The sun had barely risen when Marcus's doorbell rang urgently. Opening the door, he found Tom from accounting looking anxious and disheveled. Without a word, Tom handed him a USB drive. "I stayed late at the office last night, copying files," Tom explained, his voice shaking. "Marcus, Richard wasn't just targeting minorities. He was gathering personal information on every employee. Blackmail material. That's not even the craziest part. Inside, Tom pulled up files on Marcus's laptop. The documents revealed a complex web of shell companies, all leading back to a mysterious organization called Heritage Corporate Solutions. Look at this. Tom pointed to a series of encrypted emails. Richard was reporting to someone higher up. They called themselves the director. But here's where it gets weird. Some of these messages suggest Richard wasn't entirely in charge. He was following someone else's orders. As they dug deeper into the files, Marcus's phone rang. It was Agent Martinez. "Mr. Thompson, are you home? Stay there. Don't open the door for anyone. We're on our way." Within minutes, FBI agents surrounded Marcus's house. Agent Martinez rushed in, her face grave. "We discovered a mole in our investigation. Someone's been feeding information to Heritage Corporate Solutions. They know we're closing in." Just then, Sarah Chen called. "Marcus, I need to tell you something. I didn't really retire 3 months ago. I was forced out because I discovered financial irregularities. The company's diversity program wasn't just being dismantled. It was being used as a cover for something bigger." The pieces started falling into place. Richard hadn't just been targeting minorities. He'd been using discrimination as a smokescreen for a larger corporate espionage operation. The wrongful terminations were creating chaos, distracting from the real scheme. Diana arrived with more news. The EEOC investigation uncovered something unexpected. Heritage Corporate Solutions has connections to several major corporations. They've been using discrimination lawsuits as leverage for hostile takeovers. Agent Collins burst into the room. "We've got movement at Sterling and Associates. Someone's accessing the main servers, deleting files remotely." Tom jumped to his computer. "Not everything. I set up a backup system weeks ago. They can't delete what they can't find." As they watched, Tom revealed another shocking discovery. The backup files showed that Richard had been recording everything. Every meeting, every phone call, every email. But the recordings weren't just about discrimination. They captured confidential corporate information, trade secrets, and personal details about executives across multiple companies. "Wait," Marcus said, noticing a pattern. "These recordings, they're not just Richard's. Some of these are from before he joined the company." Agent Martinez leaned in closer. He wasn't working alone. Someone inside Sterling and Associates was helping him long before he arrived. Sarah Chen's voice crackled through the speakerphone. "I think I know who it is. The person who pushed for Richard's hiring, Linda from HR. She's been with the company for 15 years, but I recently found out her credentials are fake." Suddenly, the power in Marcus's house went out. Emergency lights from FBI vehicles cast eerie shadows through the windows. Agent Martinez's radio crackled with urgent messages. Similar power outages were happening across the city, targeting specific buildings connected to the investigation. "They're trying to destroy evidence," Tom said, his laptop now running on battery power. "But they don't know about this." He pulled up a hidden folder. "I found something in Richard's personal files. Video recordings of meetings with the director. The face is always hidden, but the voice?" Before he could finish, Marcus's phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. "You have something that belongs to us. The USB drive in your possession contains sensitive information. Return it, and this ends quietly. Refuse, and we'll release everything we have on everyone involved." Agent Martinez quickly took control. This is no longer just about workplace discrimination. This is a coordinated attack on corporate America using racial bias as a tool for corporate espionage and manipulation. As federal agents secured the house and set up emergency operations, Marcus realized the true scope of what they'd uncovered. His wrongful termination had exposed a conspiracy that went far beyond prejudiced hiring practices. Diana put a hand on his shoulder. "You wanted to fight discrimination. Instead, you might have uncovered one of the biggest corporate conspiracy schemes in history." Marcus's phone buzzed one more time. The message was simple but chilling. "Meeting in progress. The director sends regards. Checkmate approaching." The next 24 hours would change everything. The FBI had transformed Marcus's living room into a command center. Agents worked at laptops while surveillance teams monitored the perimeter. In the midst of this activity, Tom made a breakthrough. "Got it," he exclaimed, enhancing a video from Richard's hidden files. "Look at the reflection in the window behind the director. It's blurry, but that office, I know that view. It's from the top floor of Sterling and Associates. Agent Martinez studied the image. That's the executive suite, but according to building records, that floor has been under renovation for the past year. No one's supposed to be up there. Sarah Chen's voice came through the secure line they'd established. That's not entirely true. There's one person who has access. James Sterling Ayoy, the founder's grandson. He inherited a controlling interest in the company last year, but never takes meetings in public. Marcus remembered something. Wait. When Richard fired me, he mentioned maintaining traditional company values. He kept emphasizing tradition. Diana pulled up the company's history on her laptop. Look at this. Sterling and Associates was one of the first major corporations to implement diversity programs in the 1990s. James Sterling Ayoy fought against it back then, but his father overruled him. And now he's getting revenge, Agent Collins concluded, using Richard and others to dismantle everything his father built. Suddenly, the secure line crackled with urgent news from Sarah Chen. Emergency at headquarters. James Sterling Ayoy just called a press conference for tomorrow morning. He's announcing a complete company restructuring. Tom's laptop pinged with an alert. They're moving files to offshore servers. They're going to destroy everything and start fresh. Just then, Linda from HR appeared on every news channel. She was standing outside Sterling and Associates, tears in her eyes. I need to confess something, she announced to the reporters. I've been part of a systematic discrimination scheme, but I was forced to participate. I have evidence. Before she could continue, a black SUV screeched to a halt beside her. Two men in suits rushed out, escorting her away as cameras rolled. It's a diversion, Agent Martinez said firmly. They're making her the scapegoat while the real players escape. Marcus's phone lit up with messages from concerned colleagues. The company's internal messaging system was flooded with employees sharing stories of discrimination, each one fitting the pattern they'd uncovered. But among the chaos, Patricia Wells had made another discovery. The shell companies aren't just for hiding money, she explained over the secure line. They're being used to buy up minority-owned businesses after they're destabilized by discrimination lawsuits. Agent Martinez received an urgent call. James Sterling Ayoy had just boarded a private jet. Destination: unknown. No, Tom interrupted, his fingers flying over the keyboard. The flight plan is fake. I found the real one in Richard's encrypted files. He's heading to a private island where Heritage Corporate Solutions holds their quarterly meetings. Diana's legal mind was racing. We need to move fast, once he leaves the country. Before she could finish, every screen in the room lit up with a video message. The figure was shrouded in shadow, but the voice was unmistakable. James Sterling Ayoy. Mr. Thompson, he began, I have to admire your persistence. You've uncovered quite a lot. But ask yourself, what will happen to all those employees if Sterling and Associates collapses? Are you ready to be responsible for thousands of lost jobs? Marcus stood up, facing the screen. This isn't about jobs. It's about justice. The shadowy figure laughed. Justice. I'm restoring my grandfather's company to its original vision. These diversity programs, these changes, they've weakened us, but I'm willing to make you an offer. Before he could continue, Sarah Chen broke into the video feed. James, it's over. While you were focused on Marcus, I've been gathering evidence from every company you've targeted. The board members are meeting right now. You've lost control. The video feed cut out abruptly. Agents' radios crackled with updates. James Sterling Ayoy's jet was being grounded. Richard had been located trying to cross the Canadian border. The pieces were falling into place. But Marcus knew this wasn't the end. As he watched the FBI mobilize for arrests, his phone received one final message. Phase 1 complete. Initiating Phase 2. The real game is just beginning. The fight for justice had evolved into something much bigger than anyone had imagined, and the next revelation would shock them all. The next morning, Sterling and Associates headquarters was surrounded by news vans and federal agents. Inside the building's main conference room, Marcus sat beside Agent Martinez as Sarah Chen made a stunning announcement to the board of directors. James Sterling Ayoy wasn't working alone, Sarah revealed, displaying documents on the large screen. For the past decade, Heritage Corporate Solutions has been running what they called Operation Restoration across multiple corporations. Agent Martinez took over the presentation. We've uncovered evidence that Heritage Corporate Solutions has been systematically erasing records of minority achievements in corporate America. Every groundbreaking deal, every innovation, every milestone accomplished by minority employees, all deliberately hidden or credited to others. The board members sat in shocked silence as Sarah played a recovered video. It showed James Sterling UI in a private meeting with other executives, outlining their plan. "We're not just changing the present," he had said. "We're rewriting the past to control the future." Just then, Tom burst into the room. "You need to see this." We cracked Richard's personal files. He wasn't just recording meetings, he was gathering evidence against Heritage Corporate Solutions. He was working undercover. The room erupted in confusion as Richard was brought in by federal agents. His demeanor had completely changed. "I'm Agent Richard Sterling," he announced, showing his badge. "I've been working deep cover for the FBI's Civil Rights Division for 3 years. Marcus's case was supposed to be the final piece of evidence we needed, but things spun out of control when James discovered my true identity." Marcus stood up, struggling to process this revelation. "So the discrimination, my firing, was staged," Richard explained. "But James found out and tried to use it for his own agenda. I couldn't blow my cover without risking the entire operation. I'm sorry, Marcus. We never expected him to move so quickly." Diana, who had been quietly observing, spoke up. "This explains the pattern Patricia found. Each company Richard worked at was under investigation." Sarah Chen nodded. "When I discovered financial irregularities, Richard contacted me. We've been working together to expose the entire network." Suddenly, all phones in the room buzzed simultaneously. A message appeared on every screen. "Backup protocols initiated. Operation Restoration files uploading to public servers." "It's James," Richard said urgently. "He's releasing everything. Every file, every recording, every piece of evidence from every company involved. He's trying to cause chaos to cover his escape." Tom was already working to trace the upload. "The files are being sent from multiple locations, but there's something odd about the data." Before he could finish, Patricia Wells rushed in with new information. "The uploads aren't just company files. They're releasing personal information about every employee who ever filed a discrimination complaint. Thousands of people could be exposed." Agent Martinez mobilized her team. "We need to stop those uploads. Tom, can you block the servers?" "Better," Tom replied, his fingers flying over the keyboard. "I can redirect them. Instead of going public, all the files are being sent directly to the FBI's secure servers." As they worked to contain the data breach, Marcus received a private message. "You think this is over? Heritage Corporate Solutions isn't just an organization, it's an ideology. There will always be others to carry on the work." But Marcus wasn't intimidated anymore. Standing before the board, he addressed them directly. "What happened here isn't just about discrimination or corporate espionage. It's about truth. Every person deserves to have their achievements recognized, their history preserved, their contributions valued." Sarah Chen stood beside him. "Which is why we're not just going to restore what was lost. We're going to create something new. Sterling and Associates will establish a foundation dedicated to documenting and preserving the true history of minority achievements in corporate America." As the board members voted unanimously to approve this initiative, Agent Martinez received word that James Sterling II had been apprehended trying to board a submarine from his private island. The day's events would make headlines worldwide, but the real work was just beginning. As Marcus looked around the room at the allies who had helped expose the truth, he realized this wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning of real change. His phone buzzed one final time. The message was from an unknown number. "Phase 3 activated. The truth has more layers than you know. Tomorrow, we reveal everything." Marcus smiled, ready for whatever came next. The fight for justice had evolved into something much more profound, a battle for truth itself. 3 months after the dramatic events at Sterling and Associates, Marcus stood at a podium in Washington, D.C., addressing a congressional hearing on corporate discrimination. The room was packed with journalists, activists, and corporate leaders from across the country. In the audience, Sarah Chen sat beside Agent Richard Sterling, both now recognized as key figures in exposing Heritage Corporate. Tom, who had been hired as Sterling and Associates' new head of digital security, presented evidence showing how Heritage Corporate Solutions had manipulated corporate records across hundreds of companies for over 2 decades. But here's what they didn't expect. Marcus continued, displaying documents on the large screens. Every attempt to erase minority achievements actually helped us create the most comprehensive database of corporate diversity history ever assembled. The database, now called the Legacy Project, had become a national initiative. Companies across the country were contributing to it, restoring lost records and acknowledging overlooked achievements. Diana, who had been appointed to lead Sterling and Associates' new corporate justice division, approached the podium with breaking news. We just received confirmation that 20 more corporations have joined our initiative. The movement for corporate transparency is spreading globally. James Sterling EEO, watching the hearing from federal prison, had unwittingly triggered a revolution in corporate culture. His attempt to restore traditional values had instead sparked the largest corporate diversity movement in history. Patricia Wells, now heading the newly established Corporate History Preservation Committee, shared surprising findings. In reconstructing the erased records, we discovered that minority employees were behind some of the most significant innovations in corporate America. Their stories are finally being told. Agent Martinez stepped forward with an update on the investigation. Heritage Corporate Solutions wasn't just attacking diversity, they were suppressing innovation. By limiting diverse voices, they were actually holding companies back from reaching their full potential. As Marcus concluded his testimony, he revealed the most significant development yet. Sterling and Associates have been transformed into a model of corporate equality. The company's profits had soared under its new inclusive policies, proving that diversity wasn't just morally right, it was good for business. Sarah Chen took the podium to announce the launch of the Sterling Foundation for Corporate Equality. "We're not just correcting past wrongs," she declared. "We're creating a new future where every employee's contribution is valued and preserved." Tom's computer system, originally designed to track discrimination, had evolved into a powerful tool for promoting inclusion. Companies nationwide were adopting his transparency protocols, making it impossible for discrimination to hide behind corporate policies. In the aftermath of the hearing, Marcus received messages from employees around the world, sharing their stories and joining the movement for corporate equality. What had started as one man's fight against discrimination had become a global campaign for justice. Richard Sterling, now openly working as an FBI agent, approached Marcus. "You know, when I started this investigation, I thought we were just tracking criminal behavior. Instead, we ended up changing corporate culture itself." Diana shared the latest statistics. Hundreds of companies had already adopted the new transparency standards. Thousands of erased achievements have been restored, and minority employment in corporate leadership had risen significantly. As the day drew to a close, Marcus stood on the steps of the Capitol, surrounded by the allies who had helped expose the truth. Sarah Chen handed him a folder containing the final piece of evidence, proof that Heritage Corporate Solutions' attempt to erase diversity had actually preserved it forever. Sometimes, Marcus reflected, the biggest changes come from the darkest moments. What they tried to destroy, they ended up making stronger. His phone buzzed one last time, but this message was different from all the others. It was from a young employee at another company. "Thank you for fighting. Because of you, my achievements won't be erased. My story will be told." Marcus smiled, knowing that the real victory wasn't just in exposing the past, it was in changing the future. The story that began with one man's fight against discrimination had become a testament to the power of truth, justice, and the unstoppable force of positive change. As he walked down the Capitol steps, Marcus knew that while this chapter was ending, the real story of corporate equality was just beginning. The legacy of their fight would ensure that no achievement would ever be erased again, and every voice would have the chance to be heard.